and welcome to tonight's Hubraum on Air. My name is Ida. I will be your moderator for tonight, coming to you live from Berlin, from Hubraum, the technology incubator of Deutsche Telekom. So, tonight we're tackling a really passionate and really topical theme, namely sustainability in technology. And it's no secret that green tech has been gaining significant momentum. So from celebrity investors like Elon Musk and Bill Gates investing billions of dollars into the field, to the tripling of impact investment in the last 5 years in Europe, a lot is going on. And for Hubraum, it's not just actually a passion topic, but also an action topic. We just launched our 2021 Network Sustainability Award. We also just partnered with SAP to join their sustainability program together with Accenture. And we'll share a bit more about that also later on. And basically tonight is all about how startups, but also corporates can have an impact. And we have an all-star panel with us to tackle this tonight. We have our very own Foresight Leader at Hubraum to give us that overview about sustainability as a topic. We have a passionate impact investor with all the credibility to give us the best tips. We have a corporate responsibility leader from the biggest telco in Europe. You guessed it, it's Telekom. And we also have a green tech founder here to give us his view of how sustainability can be more accessible. So before we introduce all of these panelists in greater detail and get to know them better, I want to give you a quick overview of how tonight's going to go. We're going to start actually a little bit differently. First of all, we're going to get to know our panelists, and then one of them, Marcin, will give us more of a keynote to make sure we're all on the same page about what sustainability means. Then we'll dive into the conversation. From there, we would love to hear your questions. So for the Q&A, if you have anything that comes to mind, please put them in the YouTube chat. Just ask your questions there, and we will bring them in live. Or if that works better for you, please go on Twitter and use the hashtag HubraumOnAir, so we'll find it all there. So, without further ado, let's hear a bit more here from our lovely panelists. Let's start with Julia. You are an impact investor. You're a passionate leader in the field. Can you give us a sharp introduction of what your expertise is and what you're doing and bringing into the conversation tonight?
Thank you so much, Ida. It's such a pleasure to be talking to all of you like this evening. Also, hello from Berlin. I'm Julia. I'm the co-CEO and co-founder of Reimagine and also founder of Ella Impact. I'm originally Brazilian, and my 7-8 years of the past years have been dedicated to how can we really create business investment solutions that tackle social environmental problems. So I'd say that this is something that is super close to my heart, and right now what I'm working on with Reimagine is really building this next generation business bank that can really nudge more and more companies to understand what social environmental impact can mean for them, right? Trying to bridge this gap. So many talk about me being a pure impact investor. I think we do have a very strong impact thesis of understanding that regardless if you're small or big, you can have a bit more impact. So we truly believe in journeys. And I think one of the things we were going to be talking a little bit more throughout this event is how can one actually become more sustainable. So for me, on one side is really understanding that whatever product, whatever service, whatever company where you're creating, there are going to be some different impacts surrounding you. So my focus is not only on the social side of things, where I'm also super engaged with the topic of gender through Ella Impact, which is a global network of women that discuss investments and business for good, but also through Reimagine, how is it that we can leverage financial services as a new kind of incentive for companies to really look structurally and intentionally at the topic of impact.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you for everything that you're bringing into the impact ecosystem with all of your different projects. Syed, you are actively building a green tech or sustainability app within your company. Can you give us a little bit of a background on your expertise and what you're bringing into the conversation?
Hi, my name is Syed Abbas. I'm the founder and CEO for Too Simple. Our expertise is really in the area of how can we help enterprises and, matter of fact, consumers also reduce their Scope 3 emission. And it's a very serious and very complicated problem for the enterprises. But we try to make a fun game. We're using some very advanced AI technologies to calculate your impact, and it's really an esports game. So it's a multi-party game. People come in and they compete individually or as part of the team, and they win prizes, they win points, and they win bragging rights. And it's fairly connected in the social fabric of our Instagrams and Facebook, so it's highly integrated there. End of the day, what we believe that needs to happen, the world is still focusing on reducing carbon through production, and you're seeing all the movement happening through carbon capture, through new material, through EV, electric vehicles, renewable energy. But we also need to focus on reduction of the consumption part of the carbon, because this is almost half of it, what is coming in through consumers and the consumption, not from the production. That's our focus areas. We're very passionate about this area. We're very excited to be part of this panel today, and we'd like to share with our perspective. Thanks.
Thanks, Syed. And you know, that's what I always say, working in impact is so great because the passion just shines through. So thank you for sharing. Next up, because you already mentioned that, enterprise challenges when it comes to sustainability. We have Melanie, you're a corporate responsibility champion, leader, trailblazer. I would love to hear more about your experience and what you'll be bringing into the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the chance to participate today. So I'm running the sustainability management for Deutsche Telekom, and that means I'm responsible for our climate strategy and everything that has to do with setting our green environmental goals, but also running the big projects, which I'll talk about in a minute a bit further. But it also means looking at how we measure our impact. And I think Julia mentioned it, it's an important topic for us as well, specifically one of the top priorities this year in my team, and how we also look at the social side of things in terms of human rights and our responsibility as a big digitizing company in Europe. So that's basically it. And one of my key things that I can bring in today, and one of my sort of not only pet topics, but one of my core projects this year is our We Care for Our Planet program, which is a program that tries to really motivate and engage all functions at DT to set themselves further targets and to do step by step a journey towards a greener telco, because we believe if we want to be leading in Europe, we also have to be leading on the sustainability side. And I'm very much behind that topic and try to get my team and also the other colleagues moving that direction.
Thank you, Melanie. And I'm really excited to hear more about both of the measurement side and also the behavioral side, because I know already from these short introductions that you and Julia and Syed have this in common, just how do we motivate more sustainable behavior. So Marcin, definitely not least, but definitely last. You are our Foresight Leader. You are the man with the ear to the ground who knows what drives society forward. And this is priceless for us when talking about sustainability. So can you share a bit about what you're doing here at hubraum and what you can bring in tonight?
Of course. Hi, it's nice to have you here. I'm the part of the trends and analysis, like a research and analysis cluster at hubraum, and I'm responsible for tracking the signals and the trends and the forces that are coming, and we are trying to go a little bit beyond and seeing what's going to be next. But the really solid feeling of the ground of right now. So today I'm going to show you, and I'm going to give you like a small sneak peek of our expertise on finding this stuff. And sometimes we are quite disruptive in the thinking, and also like very critical in the thinking. So do not worry when you feel not very comfortable with that. This is just only to open the minds and open the heads for the discussion that we're going to have later.
Amazing. So Marcin, let's start with that. Let's start with you opening our minds and maybe also putting us all on the same page. So what is sustainability actually? And what counts as a green tech startup, and what should we know as a basis for the discussion? Take it away.
All right, thank you for that. So I would like to start maybe with a small definition of the sustainability, because usually during the using the words and getting them into the life, we are losing the meaning of the words, and they are becoming like buzzwords or the names of the departments or the titles. And the sustainability, as you can see on the slide over here, is like ability to sustain. And it means like to stay on the surface, to keep alive and to be able to survive on the one hand. On the context of the sustainability, it got the meaning of fixing the faults and errors on the word. And I'm having like a small definition of that, and I'm calling this is like doing the earth maintenance service, which is like very important for right now, and the topic is like very high over right now. Can we jump to another slide, please? And I got a quote, which is, I think, like very true for right now. And this is the words that John F. Kennedy said in 1962. It was at the same time when the NASA program started. And he said those 4 words, which I think that are very strong also for right now. The technology has no conscience. And I think that those words are really true for right now. And even the technology has no consciousness. We as people do. And as the tech industry, I think that we must exercise our conscious. That is our responsibility to ensure that the technology we create serves the people. On the right hand, on the slide, you can see the pyramid of the technology, which illustrates how we are getting used to the technology and how the technology is becoming the part of our nature, coming from like having like taming the technology that we are not very into it. Then we are accepting the technology. It becomes like an the essential part of our lives, and then it becomes the part of human nature. We as the human natures, we are the part of the environment and also the nature. So I would like to build this link between technology and the environment very strongly. The next slide is showing, I think, well known for everybody, for most of the people who are around the responsibility, the 70 goals of United Nations that were created in 2015, and it's like a declaration of 193 world leaders. They agree that that this is the ambitious goals that they will try to they would like to try to reach to stop the climate change by 2030. In recent years, the world has improved on every single one, but last year, unfortunately, we can see some kind of regress. And when I'm thinking about those goals and how to work with them, I think that this is not that we are picking up the one of the goal and we are concentrating on filling that goal, but the whole exercise and the whole thing is to combine and compare those goals with each other, and even that if are sometimes extremely different in the context. So this is like the one part of it, but I'm thinking also that the technology doesn't have like a separate goal for that, and it's just coming like some kind of creation that the 18 goal is supposed to be the responsible tech. Of course, the technology is like a common denominator for all of those goals, and we can use it as some kind of vehicle or some kind of assistance to support to reach those goals, but technology right now, it's on the spotlight, and it sounds like a very strong need to keep it as a separate goal. On the next slide, and the next thought I'm having is that no matter what kind of generation you are representing, X, Y, Z, Alpha, I generation, millennials, we are all of us are the footprints generations. So it's just we make traces and they overlaps with the traces of the other peoples, and we are blurring the sources of them. So this is like the ages that we are right now, and this kind of stuff is like very, very strong. On the other hand, the companies are employing like tactics which trying to inspire eco enthusiasm for the brands. But what happens when the customers, the people have a crisis of faith and they don't know what to do and how to react on that? We are having those kind of like a remorse of ecological conscious, and we don't know how to react on that. Like suggestion is to focus on the things that we can control, that's for sure, but the people and the customers are putting like organization under the pressure to define their success in a more life-enhancing ways than only financial growth. As companies start to re-evaluate the role in the world, they switch focus from the digital to digital transformation to purpose transformation. So this is like a very, very strong thing. On the next slide, I would like to just give you some kind of thought about it, that since the introduction of the computers and the internet was introduced, the digital technology has been conceptualized as virtual, as untouchable, something that you can is intangible somehow. And the cloud metaphor illustrates this very well. The digital ecological threat has not been treated as something to be counted until now. We are seeing that there's lots of movements, lots of initiatives and networks who are putting the attention of the real impact of the digital industry on the environment. Google admitted that the typical search online in a day is equivalent of 1.12 billion grams of CO2. The numbers of emails that we are getting is like also very, very, very high. And you can see also the figures over there, that's from the emails, each email produced from 4 to 50 grams of carbon dioxide. It means this number and this range is because of the attachments, and it depends on that. So as we are seeing right now that there's lots of like talks about the digital ecology, which means that the online presence has a direct impact on the environment. Every byte transferred or stored requires large scale of energy, terminals and infrastructure, which is also the part of the environment. So finally, going back to the John F. Kennedy words that technology has no conscience, but people are starting to have right now. I would just like to leave you with the thought that our lives today is the sum of all of our habits. And I think that it would be a good start to our conversation. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Marcin. I don't know about you on the panel, but I am very much in the mood to discuss. Thank you also for putting it into perspective that sustainability is not only about carbon and climate, it's also about people. And cities and all these other factors, as we saw in the UN Sustainable Goals. So speaking of this carbon, tech, email, tracking problem, we actually should really start with Syed, because you are building something very interesting in this direction. And I would love to hear how you got this idea, what the background is for the Nano App, and what change and impact you're trying to have with that.
Yeah, that's a very good transition. So back in 2018, we start to realize the movement that is happening in the youth, specifically from a climate standpoint. Since we are in the video business, we focus on two areas in the video: entertainment and shopping. And we've got a lot of patents in this technology. So when we start to dig into and see what's going around us in the form of these youth are really going after, we start looking in this area very deeply. And we realize that we are in a business that creates a lot of carbon. Just give you an example. As Marcin mentioned, that data consumption is going to be bigger than the airline industry generated carbon. Give you an example. 6 billion people, 7 billion people in the world, 6 billion people carrying mobile phone, 3.5 billion people carrying smartphone. In the US, on average, we are consuming close to 1 gig of data that create about 3,000 grams of carbon every day. Now, move few years, 1.5 gig, 4K stream coming into our homes. For about hour and a half movie, we're going to be consuming 10 gigs of data. So here you go, 31,000 grams, carbon being created just like that, just hour and a half, plus the other stuff that we do. So we start to realize that this is going to be a big, big problem. And if you combine that with the e-commerce, every time you go and place an order, Amazon trucks comes in and deliver a 99-cent product. I have teenage daughters. I mean, this is what they do. And they want to get this product today. They cannot wait tomorrow. Why is that? So when we start to look into these areas, we realize that this is going to be a big, big problem, big, big mess. How can we basically take advantage of this situation? And we start to see if there is a product out there in the market that can really help measure our good deeds. Because whenever we try to do anything good, we get this dopamine hit. And the more time you do the dopamine hit, it becomes and convert into serotonin, which is really a pleasure, and you feel good about it. We couldn't find anything that really records, you measure the good deeds that you're trying to do, and that we say, okay, let's just try to build a product. Took us about a year. We took it to World Scout Jamboree in summer of 2019, and we did the test in front of 40,000 youth. And for our surprise, I mean, we were totally shocked. The kind of, we saw so much interaction, so much enthusiasm from all these youths. So that's we say, okay, we've got good test results. Then we started digging into it, say, okay, can we really make money out of that? Okay, of course, we got to make sure that we take care of the people, take care of the planet. Can we really survive on it? Then we start talking to some of the people, senior people in financial businesses, and we realized that there's a great opportunity that enterprises and business are moving in this area. And if we can fill a gap by creating a tool with enterprises to really measure and report the contribution the companies and their employees are really making in order to reduce the carbon impact, that would be pretty cool. That's how we basically build Nano. And that's why we are very, very passionate about taking that product and really creating a new business model where we believe people, the planet, and then profit comes in.
Absolutely.
I think we figured it out.
Thank you, Syed, for describing that. And also, it's such a beautiful switch between talking of the problem of carbon emissions and then switching it into measuring the impact once you do good deeds. That's such a simple and easy switch to help people make the transition. Melanie, I would love to ask you, because you're also working with a lot of solutions to a lot of really complex problems, working in such a big organization to make it more sustainable. So which of the UN goals are you pursuing, and what do you think the corporate role should be in the sustainable transition? I'd love to hear some of your biggest challenges and also solutions.
Yeah, I'll try not to talk for 2 hours because I easily could. But I think one of the first challenges for corporation, because you're big and because of the complexity that you're owning as a corporation, is to select where do you put your priorities on? Because in the end, all of the 17 goals, they matter. You cannot say that any one of them is not relevant, but I think you have to sort of focus where your business model can provide either more impact or where you cause more harm to the planet or to the people. So to look at it from the social, but also from the environmental side of things. So, and that's what we did. So and I think we can say that when you look at the green things, things like having really a sustainable infrastructure, supporting smart cities and communities, working on the climate change SDG, and also responsible consumption, because it goes very close with the climate change and the resource efficiency. These are 4 of the very important topics. But when we look at the social side and our responsibility as a company who's providing telco services, who's providing access to the internet and access to other data, to social media and so on, we also have to look at things like the gender equality and what we can do to really make sure that people work in a democratic way and have in their mind that we have to think about how to reduce inequalities. So we also touch some of those SDGs as well. So in the end, it's not just one that we could pick. So and the way we then do it, and I think this links it a bit to the next challenge that we have, is then we try to identify what are the right initiatives to drive forward so that we can make the right impact here. And I think for us as a corporation, the complexity itself and how we manage the complexity, that defines a lot on what we do, because I very strongly believe into start. And even if you start small, but you need to start, but you need to know where to start. And for doing that, we talked a lot to the people in DT in different functions to identify the right initiatives. And we do have 2 big pillars which will drive us this year and next year. And one is done by my colleague looking at the social side of things. So she works a lot at the moment on how to make sure that we handle digitization in a democratic way. Yeah. So how do we as employees, for example, react to hate speech? We have our own intranet solution. And also there, you do see sometimes things which you wouldn't expect within a corporation, but we're just a representative form of a normal city. So you have people with every flavor in there. On the green side, which is more my turf, we have this huge program, this We Care for Our Planet. And there, when we had done the prioritization first, it's a lot at the moment about motivating the people, because we decided there is not a single function which we will leave out of the program. So every function can change something, but we have to find out in discussion and dialogue with them what exactly is their angle and their perspective of sustainability. And one concept which I think works quite successfully is that we can give the inspiration, we have to define a little bit the KPIs and how we measure certain things, but the responsibility per se has to be with the business function. They have to own the topic, because sustainability, I think, and that's what we see a lot, is an attitude. It's an attitude of doing things differently and overcoming behavioral patterns. And this is why owning the topic in a function is so important. And that's a strong challenge on one side, but also a strong enabler, I think, to be successful at DT. And that's sort of my role a lot, to really make sure that this motivation is there and that dialogues are done and issues and questions are sorted out, so that people can go on identifying their own little projects within our overall group-wide program to sort of turn DT into a greener telco.
Wow, Melanie, there's so much to pick out from what you just said. Also love the emphasis on collaboration and dialogue to really drive change. I think that's something that definitely resonates with us as an incubator working with many stakeholders. Julia, you are definitely one of the people that are truly driving this change, and also one of the ones that are working with startups to sort of promote and entice more sustainable business models. So can you tell us, how do you pick who you work with, and how have you defined impact now that you've been on the investment side for quite some time?
Sure. So I really love like the intro that like Marcin was giving us, and like many of the things that Melanie just mentioned. So when we're talking about impact, I think the most important thing is understanding also where we are coming from, right? Like from like a historical perspective, that things started from like a CSR perspective, going into the sustainability kind of like topic, evolving into like ESG impact, and we're coming to the regeneration kind of era right now, right? So I think that this is like the kind of evolution that we see also happening to all kinds of companies at all stages. And as like Melanie was just saying, like even like where to start from, right? if this is something that wasn't like so much part of like the whole like constitution of the company, how do you even start like looking at the topic? It can be very overwhelming. So for us, especially at Reimagine, impact is understanding that your business as a whole has to look at different dimensions and different stakeholders, correct? So your business will have like products and services that will somehow touch on customers, employees, on community, environment, investors. And it is really like this comprehensive approach for you to rethink your business that one should actually have. So whenever we are looking at a company, we start with a negative screening. So I think this is like the first step of like whatever you are in the journey, like how is it that you can like leave all the harmful things out? So for us, what negative screening actually means is that if you're like working with more than like, rephrasing, if more than 50% of your suppliers or clients are coming from harmful industries, named like oil and gas, adult entertainment, gambling, distilled alcoholics, psychedelics, and mining, and so on and so forth, we understand there's like a long way for you to change inherently the business model. So these companies we won't work with. But all the other ones, they can still like go through a very basic X-ray that will indicate where you're at in this journey, right? I think like the first step normally is like, okay, I'm gonna try to minimize the harm that I'm doing. The second step is normally, can I have some kind of like externalities that are like positive, and am I changing the business model to really solve a social environmental problem? That's really like the impact at the end of the day. So we want to work with all of those that are getting into this kind of journey and understanding that there is the first step. So for us, it's very important to like see what's the intentionality behind that, you know? And intentionality for us means, do you translate that into KPIs in your strategy? Because I think this is like one of the conversations that we're going to have more in detail, which is like measuring even, right? And I think one of the big challenges for startups is that resources are limited. So how do you make sure that you can like capture these things? And what I say is that if impact is part of your core, you don't have to choose. Whatever operational KPIs you have, they will be taking you towards the direction of impact as well. So essentially for us, different from like traditional impact investors, we want to like work with many of them and give them the right tools to like take the next step in this kind of journey that they're going into.
Great to hear.
That answers your question, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And you brought it up yourself about the direct measurement, because I'm sure, I know for a fact that that's something a lot of startups and corporates are struggling with. So I'd love to hear both from Syed and Melanie here about how you're tackling that. Syed, maybe you can start. In your business model, you obviously have an environmental impact. How do you go about measuring that? And have you designed any specific KPIs to capture that in particular?
Yeah, the way we do things is pretty simple. I mean, we, as part of the game, we have what we call nano tasks. So if your employee, if your consumer, go select your league, select your championship, select your team, and start to conduct nano tasks. So every time you conduct a nano task, we basically capture all the activities, all the data related to that. And then we use EPA. EPA is the U.S. Environment Protection Agency-based approved model to really calculate how much of a carbon emission you've been able to reduce. For instance, if you decide to drink a water from a reusable bottle, means that you have not used a single-use plastic bottle. Aside from it's really creating a lot of plastic pollution, you really save 80 grams of carbon, because that was how much it was used to produce that bottle. So we have these models that EPA has provided us. It's open, and that's how we start to measure the impact that you're slowly making it. Because at the end of the day, you are really, really making your behavior change. Once you start to go to the grocery store and you don't have your cloth bag or reusable bag, it's okay that you can also carry stuff in your hands, because every time you use this plastic bag, it is basically you're adding about 33 grams of carbon. These little simple tasks you do, and you measure and you monitor, and then you see the collective impact. And as I said, every time you do these tasks, you get a dopamine hit. And eventually, you do these little things, and then you're going to see a huge behavior change. We do it every day. So our lifestyle has changed. So every time, that's how we basically measure the impact on if this thing is working.
And that touches on something really crucial, which is how measuring in itself can actually be motivating. And I'm just imagining here, Melanie, that that's something you have experience with.
Well, motivating, that's a bit of a question, I have to say. I think it's an unavoidable necessity. You have to measure. If you can't measure, how do you want to know where you are and how successful you are? And what we're trying to do to make sure that people participate in that, because we know there is a certain administrative burden of doing it, of getting figures in, of calculating the impact that you're making, is we're sharing this up to the top management. And the good thing is that our top management is interested in the topics. And I think that's not the case for all corporations so far. So we have a good support really from our CEO and his board members. And that's, I think, good to be shown. So that's a good platform that people can share their successes, and they are welcomed and they are recognized. And that's important. But still, I have to say, I think it wouldn't be fair to neglect that it's an effort to set up the right systems, to identify the right KPIs, how you do certain things, to make sure that it is sufficient to give you transparency to analyze things and to develop the next strategy out of that, but also at the same time not overdo it. Because you can easily overdo it by getting tons of figures and data in, and then you're overwhelmed and don't know what to do with that. So that's a constant debate that we're having. And probably to make it a bit more tangible is one of the things in our program at the moment is we have a stream which is looking at packaging, because we believe that our customers will benefit, and we can help our customers to understand that telcos can do a difference if we do something on the packaging, because this is the first thing they see when they buy a physical product. Yeah. And when you change the packaging, you can make a difference in getting rid of single-use plastic, shrinking the packaging, using coloring and printing, which is mineral oil free, and so on. But to then use it as a KPI is not so easy, because we can tell you how many packages, so quantities and units we changed. Yeah, and it's a good figure, but what we cannot tell you today, for example, is how much plastic exactly we saved, because very often the baseline to say from that device to the next one, that is what has changed. This is not available. So, and there you have to sort of define the right level of granularity that says something to the audience where you want to share the KPI, but on the other side also tells you, are you successful or not? And that's still not easy. I think that's also a topic where technology development can help in the future to provide the right tools to ease that process for corporations.
Absolutely. And actually, that is a brilliant segue into the next question that I have for all of you, which is, where do you see the biggest opportunities right now? Because obviously all of these challenges also come with the possibility of solving them. So maybe Julia, you can go first. You have such a wide scope and overview of the impact startup landscape. Where do you see in 2021 that the biggest focus could be and the biggest opportunities could be?
I think there's like one important thing to take into consideration, which is the dynamic of the European context in which we are at as well, right? I think that like my experience also working a lot with like developing countries is like so many times one just tends to think that impact is actually done in developing countries, but we do have a huge opportunity and responsibility of originating a lot of innovation and really meaningful impact here from Europe, right? So I'd say, for instance, like in our case, similar to like somehow what Melanie was saying, we're looking at what are the most pressing SDGs there are here, like in Germany and Europe at large. So we're going to be talking about like responsible consumption and production, climate action, gender balance. And I think that just because these are like really pressing issues around, they are somehow also the big opportunities that we have. So for instance, in our pipeline, as I was mentioning, we are always like screening the companies to see, okay, what's coming up, right? So like what's also like out there for consumers, because that tends to be a bit more like visible right away. And a big trend that we're seeing is around consumption, definitely. And when it comes to circular economy, and we're thinking of value chains, especially when it comes to logistics. You know, I think there is like a boom that is like really like picking up in 2021, because like people are changing their behaviors also because of like COVID. So a lot of like delivery, like Syed was like talking. So yeah, we're like buying online all the time. And all of a sudden consumers are becoming more aware that, is it like meaningful that, you know, like a truck driver is coming to my door to deliver something that costs like 10 euros as well, right? And I think that we're seeing a lot of movement in like the e-transportation side of things, not only for like consumers, but also like on the logistical side for like larger like real estate developers and so on and so forth. Another thing that we're seeing quite a bit is like several different initiatives in like reduction on energy consumption. And I think here it is like a huge topic is all around like Bitcoin as well, that we still haven't really like touched into, but it's something that, for instance, has a lot of like social impact potential, but has a lot of like ground to cover still when it comes about like the environmental impact done as well. Another topic that we're seeing like up and coming a lot is on the agri-tech, right? So how is it that we can really like look at like vertical farming in a more efficient way? How is it that we can understand that like more efficiency can be brought by using like better fertilizers, by using like more technology of like precision, so that you can like better manage like climate and soil conditions, so on and so forth. So even though we're not directly like funding these companies, these are like some of the ones that I'm looking around. And also materials. I think materials for like the industry, and especially Germany, that is so strong on this like Mittelstand, right? So like really like feeding like different like industrial like value chains, that we have been like seeing a lot of like innovation coming on, like how can you like capture CO2 throughout like the production of some component for like plastic production, for instance, so that you can reduce by 50% the use of like oil at the end of the day in this kind of like whole process. So these are just like a few things that I have been seeing. And I think that in 21 is going to be very interesting to follow very closely.
Definitely. And it goes to show quite how much range there is in terms of the solutions that are needed, which also feeds into, Marcin, what you were saying about how technology can be an added layer on top of any of those UN Sustainable Development Goals to try and make them more efficient, happen more quickly. So from your point of view, if you had to be specific, are there any of those areas, any opportunities within the green tech field that you see as the most up and coming?
I think that the most counting thing which is coming from the startups is, I would like to refer what Melanie said about the attitude. And I think the attitude is like the main thing that needs to be changed. And the part of the attitude is thinking and also doing. On the one hand, thinking is like a very strong thing at the beginning, that you have to put like a full spectrum of thinking and being the part of the very systematic problem, I would say. This is the systematic problem, and we need also the systematic solution. So system thinking also is the part of it. And the privilege of the startups, I think, is that they are building from the scratch, and they got this privilege to create something on an ecosystem, which exists already. So they can plug into the existing ones or they don't have to build like the new ecosystem for, making like unnecessary products, unnecessary services. Just, think wisely about the impact on the real environment. And the other thing is that I think that the startups ventures are the classrooms of the future, and they are giving the corporations and the people like the education I'm just interpreting this into like they hydrate corporations with floating streams of knowledge and ideas, which are coming really from the real needs of the planet first, second, and the business growth third. I will see this just like that.
Great. Thank you, Marcin. Actually, right now, I would love to jump into some audience questions because we have quite a few. And as we already established, it's a complex topic. So let's try and involve our audience here. Let's start with Syed. So basing off of Marcin's presentation and also what you presented about Nano, everybody knows that carbon footprint of manufacturing is a big deal and transport is a big deal, but these invisible sources are paid way less attention to. So what do you think we should be doing here to create more awareness also about those invisible factors?
Yeah, pretty simple idea. I mean, we just need to see where the trend is happening, and we still go back into the youth. I've got teenage daughters. 99% of the time, they consume content on the mobile. Do we really need 1080p video resolution on my mobile while I'm watching this thing, such a tiny screen? Probably not. Can I lower down my resolution? Absolutely. Do I really miss out any minor things? May not, because may not be able to notice in the mobile phone. So changing the behavior a little bit would definitely help, because the next generation of the video and the content and the entertainment consumption is going to really blow everything off the roof. You're talking about mixed reality. We've got very deep understanding on that part also. So you're just talking about if you're doing a VR game or VR movie that is coming in shortly, some of the big sporting franchises are really trying to broadcast in VR now, as if you're sitting on your couch, but you're feeling as if you're part of the stadium or racing track watching Formula One. In that case, just imagine you need 4K stream coming in for one eye and the 4K stream coming in for the second eye. And if you're watching, let's say, NFL game or NBA game, you're talking about a couple of hours of that. I mean, just imagine 20, 30 gig of data, as Marcin mentioned. I mean, it's just going to be big problem. So as long as we are willing to adjust our expectation and realizing, and I think Melanie mentioned about the consumption part of it. I think we should be able to at least manage the transition, because the way we see it, the climate is going to be a revolution. We have all experienced 20 years of digital revolution. Climate is going to be even bigger than what we're seeing, is going to impact everything. Our focus is just on very micro area of that. So we believe that changing the behavior will change a lot of things about how we consume our resources.
Bottom up. I like it. Julia, I would love to hear your take on this, perhaps a little bit more broadly. How are you raising awareness about the importance of impact in the startup scene? Because you've been there from the very, very beginning in Brazil, and maybe you can share with us some of the key success factors in that journey now that you've witnessed the growth of this part of the industry.
I think that one of the super important factors in this whole journey was actually bringing the awareness that it's not because we're talking about the environment and people that we're not talking about economic opportunities. So there is like a lot of education to say that like profit doesn't exclude people and the planet. So like all these years that I've been like working on this topic, and I even like recently wrote a short article on like this experience of like, from like the beginning, I was trying to convince entrepreneurs that they could be impact entrepreneurs while still being like financially successful, So like meaning that whenever we have like something that hasn't been like tackled, it is an opportunity. So I think that this is something that people understood, that all of a sudden, if we don't like look at these macro factors that are not straight away part of like the traditional like business modeling, we also won't have like long-term success. So slowly what I see happening is that like startups understood that there is also this kind of like imminent change in the zeitgeist, right? Like this whole like feeling in the world that there's something off, and thanks to like the millennials and the Z generation, and even like more women coming to the workforce and becoming investors and so on and so forth, there is this shift also from a consumer side. So all of a sudden, we see that us as little individuals, we have such a power to change the whole economic structure. And startups, as we were like saying just like before, they do have this like advantage of like starting from scratch. And that's why I think that they are like really like the front runners. They are the responsibles of really like accelerating this whole trend and showing also corporates that there is a market for that consumers are ready to take action. They are ready to embrace new technologies that are going to be more like wholesome for the planet and for societies at large. So I think this is like where we're like heading, and essentially like this perception that there is something there. And all of a sudden, after like some decades now, we have also like data showing that there doesn't have to be like a concession between like profits and actually doing good. So as Marcin was saying, like at the beginning, we truly believe there's like money and business and tech, they are like all neutral, and they should and they can be forces for good. And that's where like many startups, they're like really waking up for that. And we see like happily so many networks and communities really driven by this kind of purpose, be it like the Green Tech Alliance, Leaders for Climate Action. I think there are like different ways of like starting to look like what is the next step that we can take, right? So that's a little bit what I would say.
Absolutely. And it's great to realize that startups can be the trailblazers that really show a demand. And I guess, Melanie, you are working really on the inside to try and motivate corporate sustainability from the very core. So we have a question specifically touching on the motivation part. Can you share with us, you did a bit already, but share with us some tips, tricks, success stories for how to really motivate all of these different units and employees towards sustainable action, and maybe also just sustainable interest to begin with?
Yeah, I can. I think the way we did it, and I think we're not the only ones who did it this way, is we do have two areas that we work from, and one is top down and the other one is bottom up. And I think you need both. You cannot just do one of them. So top down is important because you always have with the topic of sustainability, because it's still a relatively fresh topic for corporates compared to other topics like financial targets and so on. You need the sort of the guidance from the top and the agreement that the top accepts that this is part of the strategy or even supports it in certain angles, so that there is the right to do it. Because specifically on the middle management, what we experienced is that they sometimes have issues in picking this up because their own functional targets are maybe different and may not incorporate sustainability so far. And everyone tries to really narrow down complexity to certain priorities. That's what you learn as a manager. You have to prioritize and deliver. Yeah. So you need the right to play in that field. So this is where top down helps. The second thing that works very well for us is the bottom up initiatives. We have a pioneer community, Green Pioneers, and they have different names in other countries. And they really, by the signal from our CEO, they are asked to come together to identify topics, to drive their own initiatives, to do training sessions, to, I don't know, do waste collection in a certain facility in a certain country, to talk about nutrition. And there is not really a limit, as long as it somehow plays into sustainability. And so they can really play with that, and people can find and can engage in a topic which is closer to their heart, and that may be a social one or maybe a green one or a very specific one. And by doing so, they start engaging and talking to others. And the only thing they have to commit to us is that they act as multipliers for the group strategies in terms of sustainability, and that they sort of engage. Yeah, but the level of engagement is really free to them. And that gives them a lot of flexibility to identify what to do. And that also helps to bring other people on board. And this community is really growing every month without us doing further marketing on it, because the marketing comes through the people. And what we give them is a platform. We share their successes across the company. We give them sometimes a little bit of budget, though there's in the end not a lot available. So it's really a self-driven community, like a community should be. And then people take over for that topic, and we have now experts for planting trees, and we have experts on nutrition, and we have people who go into employee mobility, and some go into technology development topics. So you can find a broad range of interests. And I think that is one of the success factors, that you give your employees a voice, because those are the people who voted Green parties in the EU election, for example. So they are also part of your company. So give them the voice and give them the chance to being engaged.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. I would also like to close with hearing from each and every one of you, starting with Marcin. If you were starting a green tech or a sustainable tech company today, what's the first piece of advice you would give to that person?
Deal with digital trash. That's the only words I can say.
Very quotable. Julia, what would you say?
I like to tell people to have a look at the SDGs, but understand that there's like a directional like framework that's not exhaustive, but it can really give you a hint where like the heat is actually like building up, right? So this is like the first thing. And if somehow there is some kind of activity in place already, is like understanding what kind of harm is being done by your company, because at the end of the day, what we want to see is also like net positive impact, right? I think that many times what I see happening is like either a startup looks at the social impact or the environmental, and then leaves outside all the other two, like social and governance as well, right? I think it's like understanding that a startup should be a holistic thing, but just an understanding that also with time you can become more sophisticated. So be also generous with yourself and understanding that you won't get it all right from the beginning.
Dare to begin. That's great. Syed, what would be your advice?
So I would say, guys, follow the money. There's a lot of money going into the climate. Just see, I mean, look at the ESG investing. There's about $30 trillion already there. You see US is back. Very, very good sign. It's been out in climate scene for the last 4 or 5 years. Biden administration has planned to spend close to $2 trillion. Follow the money. They are changing their procurement processes too. U.S. is one of the big. The U.S. federal government is one of the big procurement company. They issue close to $600 billion contract every year. A lot of money there. So the punchline is follow the money, follow the trend, see what's going on the consumer side. You see consumer behavior changing. Follow the youth. Look at the enterprises' pain points. Some of them are being introduced by both Julia and Melanie. There are a lot of pain points that entrepreneurs can really figure out and solve. And lastly, I would say just stay focused on things the way we see it: people, planet, and then profit. You're going to do good.
Great. Definitely useful advice in there. Melanie, what would you say?
I think the most important thing for corporations, because of this complexity topic, is to start. Even if you start small, just stop too much talking and too much analyzing, etc. Just start. And when you start, then remember one thing: sustainability. This is not a sprint. It's not one project. It's a marathon. So you have to have a long breath, and you have to keep that long breath because that's what you need to do.
Thank you. So on that note, we will be closing tonight's hubraum on air. It's been a pleasure. We talked about the importance of having a framework to really align your impact. We talked about the importance of behavioral change and how that can be both top-down and bottom-up, and especially when it's measurable, that can make it even more motivating. We talked about the importance of community and also just how much money is actually flowing into this, and that profit, purpose, and planet are no longer, if they ever were, opposites. So thank you, all of our panelists, for sharing that fantastic advice. We're really grateful to all of you, and I'm sure if you in the audience have specific questions towards either of them, that they would be really happy to hear from you and connect with you. So here at hubraum, as I hinted to in the beginning, we are also taking sustainability very seriously. It's a passion topic, but also an action topic. So we just launched the hubraum 2021 Network Sustainability Award. And if you are someone that are working on a project where you could in some way make telecommunication networks more sustainable, then you should for sure apply for this award. If you go on the link that you can see here, which will also be posted in the YouTube chat, you can have a look at all the different requirements and what we're looking for and what's in it for you. I can allude to the fact that there is a there's a big prize coming up, including, of course, cash prizes, but the main thing is really getting the chance to build a proof of concept together with us at Deutsche Telekom and our partners. And we are also then launching the sustainability program together with SAP. That is something that you can keep in touch with if you join our newsletter or if you follow us on social media. We'd love to see you there if you're not there already. And with that, I would like to thank you so much for being here tonight and for asking all of your questions. And we will see you again on March 23rd, where we'll be talking about extended reality. So stay tuned for that and have a really lovely Thursday night.